15. Black R&B Legends sex scandals with fans finally exposed. Fame hides more than it reveals, and behind the polished image of R&B's greatest voices lie secrets few dare to speak. From whispered invitations slipped after shows to shadowy meetings that blurred the line between admiration and scandal. 15 Black R&B legends carried stories that shook the very foundation of their legacy. This isn't just about music. It's about power, intimacy, and the dangerous price of being adored. Are you ready to confront the untold truth behind the icons you thought you knew? Hit like, subscribe, and stay with Legends of Black Excellence as we uncover the scandals finally exposed. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye's legacy is undeniable. Known as the Prince of Motown and later crowned the Prince of Soul, he gave the world unforgettable anthems like Let's Get It On, 1973, and Sexual Healing, 1982. These songs made him not only a voice of his generation, but also a cultural icon of sensuality and liberation. Yet behind the velvet tones and seductive lyrics, whispers emerged that Marvin blurred the line between art intimacy and his adoring fans. During his 1977 European tour, rumors swirled through hotel hallways and backstage corridors. Crew members claimed that when the stage lights dimmed and the audience left, certain fans were quietly invited behind closed doors. Some carried white flowers, others perfume so strong it cut through the heavy smoke of the venues. Letters left on pianos bore messages from Vienna, Amsterdam, and Paris fan confessions, written in hurried ink, blending admiration with longing. No photographs survive, and no statement from Marvin ever confirmed the rumors, but their persistence left fans wondering if the man who sang of love had taken it beyond the stage. One former roadie recalled that Marvin cherished the quiet after the storm, sometimes with company. It was a vague comment, but heavy with implication. Was it just companionship or something deeper, more intimate? Some fans insisted that they didn't just attend his concerts, they were drawn into his private world where the lines between music and desire dissolved. For black artists like Marvin, the 1970s were a battlefield of respect and recognition. The music industry was still plagued by prejudice, and fame brought both adoration and suffocating pressure. Perhaps those whispered nights were an escape, a way to reclaim control in a world that demanded perfection on stage, but offered little peace off it. Yet for many fans, those same stories became the first cracks in an image they had held sacred: Marvin as the embodiment of sincerity and pure love. When the stories surfaced, they traveled far beyond Europe. American press seized on them not with hard evidence, but with speculative headlines that added weight to the myth. By the 1980s, when Marvin returned with his Grammy-winning Sexual Healing, the rumors resurfaced, painting a contradiction, a man preaching tenderness yet entangled in tales of blurred intimacy. Today, these accounts remain unverified fragments of memory, half-truths whispered like a scratch on the record of soul music history. But that's exactly why they endure. Marvin Gaye remains a paradox, the man who taught the world how to love through music, while facing persistent shadows that complicated his legacy. Whether scandal or misunderstood humanity, the stories remind us that even legends live at the crossroads of adoration and temptation. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin, forever celebrated as the Queen of Soul, carried a voice that could move mountains and redefine generations. With classics like Respect, 1967, and Natural Woman, 1968, she became more than an artist. She was an emblem of power, dignity, and female independence. Yet, away from the thunderous applause and bright stage lights, there were whispers of private encounters that painted a more vulnerable human portrait of the legend. One of the most enduring rumors stemmed from Detroit in the winter of 1982. Aretha was at the height of her fame, having recently collected Grammy Awards and cemented her reputation as a cultural icon. That evening, however, she didn't rush home with her entourage or retreat into the solitude that often follows a performance. Instead, according to a retired hotel waiter, Aretha was seen sharing tea by a misty window with a young fan, a familiar face from the front row across several nights. The fan, clutching a crumpled concert ticket that still smelled of fresh ink, seemed overwhelmed. Witnesses recalled laughter echoing softly louder than the piano music drifting from the hotel lobby. No cameras intruded, no reporters were present, and yet the story quickly circulated among Detroit's close-knit music community. Some claimed Aretha sang a short, unreleased song during the meeting. Others whispered she left behind a note that read, "She knew how to make a fan feel seen." For the Black community in Detroit, this rumor struck a different chord. Aretha was not just a superstar, but also a hometown daughter who had carried their collective struggles onto global stages. To hear that she might spend time with an ordinary fan didn't spark outrage. Instead, it deepened her image as relatable, perhaps even lonely, in her own fame. But it also created a paradox. How could the Queen of Soul, expected to embody strength and perfection, allow herself such intimate vulnerability? The press at the time ran with the idea of silent confessions, not affairs of the flesh, but unspoken moments where admiration and intimacy blurred together. While there was no evidence of impropriety, the very existence of the rumor shifted her public image. Fans began to see her not just as an untouchable diva, but as a woman who craved connection even at the risk of gossip. Unlike the fiery scandals that plagued other artists, Aretha's alleged late-night encounter was quiet, understated, and strangely poetic. It wasn't about headlines or broken reputations. It was about the thin boundary between idol and admirer. Decades later, the story still lingers like the faint trace of steam on a winter window, reminding us that even queens sometimes longed to be simply human. Teddy Pendergrass. Teddy Pendergrass. The man whose voice could shift from raspy growl to velvet smoothness in an instant was more than just an R&B star. He was a symbol of raw masculinity and seduction during the late 1970s and early 1980s. His concerts weren't just musical events. They were experiences drenched in sensuality. Songs like Turn Off the Lights, 1979, became more than ballads. They were invitations to intimacy delivered to millions of women who filled arenas just to hear him sing. But behind the stage lights and screaming fans, rumors began to swirl that Teddy's charisma carried into private encounters that blurred the line between performance and scandal. The whispers began during his Turn Off the Lights tour. Fans reported receiving discreet handwritten notes, small slips of paper with black ink that read, "Come listen to the real encore." Unlike official tour passes, these invitations were selective, handed only to women who lingered after the shows. In cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, and New York, stories emerged of women being escorted to high-floor hotel suites where the lights were dim. A golden lamp flickered on the wall, and Teddy performed not for thousands, but for a chosen few. One woman, years later, recalled him singing lines from an unreleased demo, her heart racing in the kind of silence no concert hall could ever capture. What made these stories linger was not what was said, but what was left unsaid. No photographs, no official confirmation, only the memories of those who claimed to have been there. The press labeled them hotel whispers, half-truths carried through corridors but never loud enough to be verified. And Teddy himself. He never admitted or denied the stories. His silence was intoxicating. The absence of explanation gave fans license to imagine, to fill in the gaps with their own fantasies or suspicions. For Black male artists of the time, public scrutiny was already heightened. To be both celebrated and doubted was a constant balancing act. In many ways, these rumors added to Teddy's allure, cementing him as a figure of mystery and desire. Yet they also risked chipping away at his image. Women who spent their youth waiting in line for tickets now wondered if they were excluded from a secret world reserved only for a chosen few. The tragedy of Teddy's life, his career interrupted by a car accident in 1982 that left him paralyzed, only magnified the power of these whispers. The scandals never exploded into full-blown headlines, but they became part of his legend, the man who could electrify an arena, then vanish into the night, leaving rumors that he carried the intimacy of his songs into his private world. Whether true or not, the whispers made Teddy Pendergrass both more enigmatic and more human, a star whose power was felt on stage and perhaps far beyond it. Prince Rogers Nelson was never just an artist. He was a universe of his own. Known as the Purple One, his concerts in the 1980s were not just shows but spiritual rituals where sexuality, funk, and freedom collided. With hits like 1999, Kiss, and Purple Rain, Prince turned music into mysticism. Yet behind the glamour and the glittering stage lights, a darker mythology formed. Stories of Purple Night's secret gatherings, where chosen fans were invited into his private world. According to tour staff, the selection was always mysterious. Some whispered about a handwritten list marked in purple ink, names chosen without explanation. Those on the list would find themselves slipping past guarded doors into dimly lit rooms where Prince sat with his guitar strumming riffs never heard in public. A lighting technician remembered, it wasn't wild, it felt like a ritual. Dim lights, soft drinks, and Prince watching every face as though he was searching for something. Fans described an intimacy unlike any other, a closeness that was both thrilling and unsettling. Do you think these Purple Nights were harmless experiments in artistry, or do they reveal a troubling imbalance of power between idol and admirer? Unlike the chaotic scandals of his contemporaries, Prince's rumors carried a spiritual, almost cult-like aura. Some said these sessions were where he tested new music, filtering out ideas before they reached the studio. Others believed they were about energy-choosing fans who inspired him, who fed his creativity in ways applause never could. But the secrecy is what kept the legend alive. No cameras, no press, no concrete evidence, only fragmented recollections from dancers, technicians, and a handful of fans who swore they lived it. For the Minneapolis community, the Purple Nights became part of Prince's folklore, a secret code that made him both untouchable and oddly accessible. To his loyal followers, it wasn't scandal in the traditional sense, but intimacy wrapped in mystery. Still, critics questioned the blurred line. Was this the generosity of an artist giving back, or the seduction of fame bending admiration into private rituals? Prince never addressed the rumors directly. When asked, he would smile cryptically sometimes, quoting his own lyrics, leaving journalists with more questions than answers. That silence only deepened the mythology. By the time his career stretched into the 1990s and beyond, the stories of purple invitations and secret rooms had become inseparable from his legacy. In the end, the Purple Nights remained suspended between reality and imagination, like a chord never fully resolved. They remind us of the paradox at the heart of Prince, a man who bared his soul on stage yet guarded his private world with veils of secrecy. Whether these gatherings were artistic sanctuaries or intimate scandals, they reveal the fragile, fascinating space where music fame and human desire collide. Rick James, the self-proclaimed super freak, embodied excess in every sense of the word. With his flamboyant costumes, explosive stage presence, and hits like Give It To Me Baby 1981 and Super Freak 1981, he was the face of funk-infused R&B that celebrated liberation and rebellion. But behind the spotlight, whispers about his infamous Velvet Room fed one of the most enduring scandals of his career. The Velvet Room wasn't a public place, nor was it a typical dressing room. According to those who worked on his tours, it was a private chamber known only by a code name and unlocked with a silver key engraved with the letter R. Inside the atmosphere was surreal red velvet curtains, dim lighting, and an old sound system where Rick tested unreleased tracks. To some, it was simply a creative sanctuary. To others, it was the epicenter of intimate encounters between the star and carefully selected fans. Those who claimed to have entered described nights of red wine, hushed conversations, and occasional private performances that blurred the line between artist and admirer. One fan recalled being invited to hear a never-before-released track, only to realize the atmosphere carried a strange intensity, as if she had crossed from the concert hall into another world entirely. The press at the time labeled the phenomenon the Velvet Circle. Blurry photos emerged showing only shadows and faint traces of red light peeking through heavy curtains. No clear evidence ever confirmed the more salacious rumors, but the lack of clarity only fueled speculation. Some crew members insisted the room was a place where Rick sought comfort from the loneliness of fame. Others whispered about gestures, touches on shoulders, hands held too long that suggested deeper intimacy. For Rick James, the scandal aligned all too well with his public image. He was larger-than-life, unpredictable, and always teetering on the edge of controversy. Unlike Aretha Franklin's quiet, silent confessions or Prince's mystical Purple Nights, Rick's Velvet Room carried an unmistakable aura of danger. Fans loved him for his boldness, but they also feared what might lie beyond that velvet curtain. In retrospect, the Velvet Room became less a confirmed reality than a mirror of Rick James himself. Explosive and charismatic on stage, yet craving private spaces where he could drop the mask of celebrity. Whether it was simply a room for music experiments or a secret lair of scandal, it remains part of the Rick James mythos, vivid, shadowy, and impossible to ignore. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is often remembered as a musical genius, a man who transformed the soul of Motown into a universal language of hope and joy. With classics like Superstition, 1972, Isn't She Lovely, 1976, and I Just Called to Say I Love You, 1984. His artistry transcended barriers of race, ability, and genre. Yet even legends who seemed untouchable were not immune to whispers of intimacy that blurred the line between admiration and scandal. The most persistent story comes from Motown Studios in the late 1970s. According to a studio technician, one night stretched far longer than rehearsals ever should. The clock struck midnight. The room was dimly lit, and only two people were inside: Stevie and a young woman unfamiliar to the crew. Rumors say she had written him a heartfelt letter describing her illness and her dream of hearing an unreleased song to soothe her soul. Whether out of compassion or something deeper, Stevie welcomed her in. What followed has never been captured on tape. Witnesses only recall faint piano chords drifting for nearly 30 minutes, punctuated by soft laughter and the tapping of feet on the wooden floor. The technician described it as a conversation through keys, not words. For some, this was a touching gesture of humanity. For others, it raised uneasy questions about the private world of an idol whose lyrics preached universal love. The rumor quickly spread beyond Detroit. Some insisted Stevie sang songs no audience had ever heard, turning a private studio into the smallest concert hall imaginable. Others suggested the evening extended beyond music into emotional territory that blurred the boundaries of artist and admirer. No photos exist, no interviews confirmed it. And when asked years later, Stevie only smiled, half open, half guarded, leaving people to wonder whether silence was his way of protecting himself or her. Unlike the flamboyant excess of Rick James, or the ritualistic mystique of Prince Stevie's alleged scandal, carried a quieter weight. It wasn't about wild parties or coded invitations, but about the fragility of connection. A superstar constantly under the glare of the spotlight, choosing to meet one voice in private. To some, it was a reminder of his deep empathy. To others, it was a dangerous blurring of the lines that could tarnish even the purest reputation. Decades later, the story endures not because of its certainty, but because of its mystery. Was it a simple act of kindness or something more complex? Stevie Wonder's music taught the world to believe in love, but this rumor remains the scratch on the record, a reminder that even the most celebrated legends carried secrets behind closed doors. Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross will forever be remembered as the velvet voice of R&B, the man who turned ballads like Never Too Much, 1981, and Here and Now, 1989, into timeless love letters for millions. On stage, his presence was commanding, yet tender, his voice powerful enough to still entire arenas. But behind the soft glow of concert lights, there were rumors of quieter nights gatherings that blurred the line between hospitality and scandal. During his European tours of the mid-1980s, whispers began to circulate of after-show tea parties that weren't listed on any tour schedule. Fans who lingered near hotel lobbies or backstage exits sometimes received discreet invitations not to lavish parties, but to small, intimate gatherings where Luther served tea and played unreleased mixes. One fan recalled being invited to his suite in London's Dorchester Hotel, where a record spun softly while only a few chairs circled a table. The music felt completely different, she said. Warm, personal, as if he was singing just for us. These accounts were never photographed or officially confirmed, but blurry images taken in hotel corridors showed shadows of Luther's long coat slipping into half-closed doors after midnight. Each city, Paris, Amsterdam, Berlin, seemed to add another layer to the mythology. For those who believed the night the soul stayed longer wasn't just a headline, it was a code for exclusivity. For those who were left outside, it raised questions about favoritism and secrecy. Unlike Rick James's wild velvet room or Prince's ritualistic purple nights, Luther's alleged encounters were painted as calm and reflective. They weren't about excess, but about lingering connection after hours of pouring his heart into a stage. Yet that serenity didn't shield him from speculation. Journalists asked whether these sessions crossed into something more personal, something that blurred the delicate boundary between artist and admirer. Luther never denied nor confirmed the rumors. His silence, paired with his shy, private nature, only deepened the mystery. At his career peak, Luther was admired for his meticulousness and his almost obsessive dedication to craft. The thought of him sharing unreleased tracks with a handful of strangers felt both intimate and risky. Fans carried those experiences like sacred memories, tokens that no concert ticket could buy. Meanwhile, others wondered if they were evidence of a deeper, more scandalous side to the star. In the end, the midnight tea gatherings remain one of the softer scandals in R&B lore. No explosive headlines, no broken careers, just whispers of warmth and exclusivity that linger like steam on a teacup. For Luther Vandross, the paradox endures: a man who sang to millions about love, while perhaps offering his most vulnerable moments to only a chosen few. Anita Baker. Anita Baker, often called the songstress of Quiet Storm, enchanted audiences with her smoky contralto voice and timeless ballads like Sweet Love, 1986, and Giving You the Best That I Got, 1988. Known for her poise and elegance, Anita built her reputation as a reserved and disciplined artist who poured perfection into every note. Yet even she could not escape whispers that suggested moments of intimacy beyond the spotlight. One such story unfolded in Chicago in 1986 at a concert that almost collapsed due to a sudden technical failure. As the band scrambled and the crowd grew restless, a fan seated in the third row pointed out the problem to the crew. His quick intervention saved the night. The show resumed, the audience roared, and Anita, always meticulous, took note of the man who had kept her performance alive. Hours later, that same fan reportedly received a small handwritten card. "Would you like a quiet drink?" What followed was never captured by cameras, but whispers say he joined her at a private room with nothing more than a piano, a bottle of red wine, and Anita's voice unaccompanied, delivering a song never released to the public. The fan later recalled, "It felt like I was the only audience in the world." The story spread quickly, not because of evidence, but because it sounded too extraordinary, too intimate to dismiss as fiction. The local press wrote vaguely about Anita's way of saying thank you, but gossip columns took the story further, suggesting a blurred boundary between gratitude and intimacy. Unlike the flamboyant rumors surrounding Rick James or the mysticism of Prince Anita's alleged scandal, was subtle, almost tender. Yet precisely because she was known for her reserved nature, the rumor felt more shocking. Anita's career was defined by discipline. She was not the type to chase tabloid headlines or thrive on controversy. That contrast made the rumor more powerful. If even Anita Baker had a secret moment behind closed doors, what did that say about the private lives of other icons fans debated endlessly? Some believed it was nothing more than an intimate thank you from an artist to a supporter. Others suggested it was proof that even the most disciplined star longed for private connection. Decades later, the story endures, lingering like the echo of her voice at the end of a ballad. True or not, it captures the paradox of fame, an artist who gave her all to millions, yet may have chosen to share her rarest song with only one. For Anita Baker, the rumor remains an unsung verse, quiet, mysterious, and unforgettable. Janet Jackson. By the late 1980s, Janet Jackson had risen beyond the shadow of her famous family, carving out her own empire with the groundbreaking Rhythm Nation 1814 tour. Her sharp choreography, socially conscious lyrics, and commanding presence made her not just an entertainer, but a cultural force. Yet even as she stood for unity and empowerment on stage, rumors circulated about a very different world unfolding once the house lights dimmed. Insiders whispered about a mysterious private list during the Rhythm Nation tour in 1989. Unlike the official VIP passes, these invitations weren't printed by promoters or backed by corporate sponsors. They were handwritten slips of paper, sometimes names jotted into a small leather notebook allegedly kept by Janet or her closest aides. Fans, selected from the front rows, or even by a sudden phone call from an unlisted number, were quietly ushered through back corridors into late-night gatherings. What exactly happened in those rooms remains one of R&B's most elusive scandals. Some stories say the meetings were nothing more than intimate listening sessions where Janet played unreleased demos and served tea. Others claim the atmosphere carried a more personal charge with laughter, long conversations, and connections that went beyond music. A former security guard later admitted, "Sometimes it felt more personal than professional." His vague words were enough to ignite decades of speculation. The press at the time dared not confront the issue directly, but headlines hinted at it. The other list: Rhythm, After Dark. Fans themselves began to notice strange disappearances, familiar faces from fan clubs who suddenly vanished, clutching keepsakes like undated signatures or mysterious phone numbers. For a performer known for discipline and secrecy, this aura of exclusivity only deepened her mystique. What made the rumors powerful was their contrast to Janet's public persona. On stage, she was the voice of unity, commanding thousands to believe in social change. Off-stage, whispers painted her as someone who selectively blurred the line between performer and admirer. The contradiction didn't destroy her career. It may have even fueled her legend. She remained untouchable in the charts, yet mysteriously human in the shadows. Unlike explosive scandals that wrecked careers, Janet's alleged private list never became a tabloid disaster. Instead, it lingers as one of those half-confirmed, half-denied stories that both unsettled and fascinated her audience. Fans still debate whether it was real or myth, but what's undeniable is how it added another layer to Janet's legacy, a pop revolutionary whose public fight for unity may have been mirrored by private moments of selective intimacy. Whitney Houston. Whitney Houston was more than a superstar. She was the golden voice of a generation. A singer whose range could silence entire arenas and whose hits like I Will Always Love You, 1992, and Greatest Love of All 1985 turned her into a global phenomenon. To the public, Whitney embodied elegance, power, and near perfection. Yet even she could not escape whispers of intimacy with fans that blurred the line between gratitude and scandal. The most enduring rumor dates back to a freezing New York night in 1991, just after a concert at Madison Square Garden. The show ended with confetti still clinging to the audience's hair, but for a handful of people, the night wasn't over. According to witnesses, a young assistant approached select fans in the crowd and quietly said, "Miss Houston would like to see you upstairs." No official passes, no flashy VIP treatment, just hastily printed cards leading to a hotel suite near the venue. There, on a high-floor balcony overlooking Manhattan's shimmering skyline, Whitney allegedly welcomed them with nothing more than a cream-colored coat, a soft smile, and a guitar leaning against the railing. Some fans claimed she strummed a few notes of an unreleased song, her voice drifting into the cold December air like smoke. Others insisted the atmosphere felt more intimate, as if music had given way to conversations too personal to be spoken in public. The press at the time called it a balcony rendezvous, reporting only in vague terms, candles flickering in the winter wind glasses of wine that seemed to refill themselves, laughter carried away by the night air. Nothing salacious was proven, yet the absence of photos or recordings gave the story its enduring power. Fans debated endlessly. Was this Whitney showing her human side or stepping into dangerous territory where adoration became intimacy? For the Black community and for her global audience, the rumor revealed both her vulnerability and her contradictions. On stage, she was untouchable, almost angelic. In whispers, she became human, someone who longed for closeness beyond the roar of thousands. Her refusal to ever address the story directly only deepened the mystery. That silence allowed the balcony rendezvous to live on as legend suspended between truth and myth. In the end, Whitney Houston's alleged scandal wasn't explosive or career-breaking, but it struck a chord precisely because it contrasted with her pristine image. To this day, the story lingers like a half-sung refrain, fragile, beautiful, and unresolved, just like Whitney herself. Usher Raymond IV, crowned the king of R&B in the late 1990s and early 2000s, was more than just a chart-topping artist. He was the soundtrack of a generation discovering love, heartbreak, and desire. With global hits like You Make Me Wanna, 1997, Yeah, 2004, and Confessions, 2004. Usher became a household name admired for his voice dancing and magnetic charisma. But as technology began to redefine fan culture, Usher's career became tied to whispers of late-night connections that blurred the line between intimacy and scandal. In the early 2000s, fan clubs operated not just through concerts and magazines, but also through the growing power of email text and eventually instant messaging. It was during this digital transition that rumors emerged of Usher sending private, unexpected messages to certain fans. Screenshots circulated of short, ambiguous notes. Still awake. Want to talk for a bit. Some claimed the conversations evolved into video calls where blurred images of a dimly lit room, studio lamps, or even snippets of unfinished music could be seen behind him. To the fans involved, these moments felt both exhilarating and unsettling. An idol stepping directly into their private lives through a glowing screen. Tabloids at the time branded the story Midnight Connections. No hard evidence was ever released publicly. Many alleged screenshots were deleted, and those who shared their experiences often disappeared from fan forums after the media frenzy. When pressed for comment, Usher's team remained vague, stating only, "We love our fans, always have." His refusal to clarify further left the public torn. Were these just fabrications of overzealous fans? Or was there truth in the idea of the superstar dialing into bedrooms at 2 a.m.? What makes the Usher story distinct from older R&B scandals is its digital nature. Marvin Gaye had whispered hotel encounters, Teddy Pendergrass allegedly handed out private notes, and Janet Jackson supposedly kept handwritten lists. But Usher's alleged intimacy was mediated by technology, instant, untraceable, and deeply personal. It symbolized the new age of fandom, where the barrier between star and admirer was thinner than ever, and where a simple message could spark rumors lasting decades. For Usher, whose music thrived on themes of passion and confession, the scandal felt almost too aligned with his persona. Whether true or exaggerated, it added another layer to his reputation, a man who could seduce arenas, yet possibly sought connection in the quietest, loneliest hours of the night. In the end, the so-called midnight connections remain unresolved, half-rumor, half-digital legend. But they remind us that even in the age of instant access, intimacy with idols can be as mysterious and controversial as it was in the eras before. Chris Brown. By the late 2000s, Chris Brown had become one of R&B's most polarizing figures. With his explosive dancing chart-topping singles like Run It 2005 and Forever 2008, and undeniable stage energy, he was hailed as the heir to Michael Jackson's throne. But with fame came controversy, and whispers of backstage encounters only deepened his complicated legacy. During his 2010 tour, rumors spread among tour staff and fans about a mysterious second door. Unlike the official backstage entrances with security and fan passes, this door was said to lead into a dimly lit room with no signage, no decorations, only the faint smell of perfume and the heavy thump of bass bleeding from speakers. According to insiders, after each show, a very small number of female fans were quietly led through this hidden corridor. Once the door closed, the music changed, slowing from the booming performance tracks to softer R&B melodies, accompanied by laughter that tour staff could hear echoing faintly in the hallway. Tabloids immediately seized on the whispers, publishing suggestive headlines like "Heat Behind the Hidden Room." Yet no photographs or videos ever surfaced, making the story both unverifiable and irresistible. A former security guard claimed he saw fans leaving the corridor near dawn, their hair tousled, their faces flushed, though he admitted he never saw what actually happened inside. Chris Brown himself brushed the rumors aside with a half-smile, once quipping to reporters, "Fans deserve surprises sometimes." That single line, cryptic, playful, and deflective, only fueled more speculation. The allure of the hidden door scandal was that it symbolized both privilege and exclusion. While thousands of fans screamed in arenas, only a select few allegedly stepped into that shadowy room. For admirers left outside, it became a story of access denied. For those rumored to be invited in, it was the chance of a lifetime and intimacy no ticket could ever buy. Unlike Whitney Houston's balcony rendezvous or Usher's midnight calls, Chris Brown's alleged scandal felt darker, almost transactional. It spoke to the power imbalance between a young superstar at his peak and the vulnerable fans who adored him. Still, the ambiguity kept it alive. Was it truly scandalous, or simply a fabrication of staff gossip and jealous fans? To this day, the second door remains one of the most talked about rumors in Chris Brown's career. It highlights not only the mystery that fame creates, but also the dangerous allure of exclusivity, where music and intimacy collide in ways the public is never allowed to see. Toni Braxton. Toni Braxton's sultry contralto voice made her one of the most recognizable R&B singers of the 1990s and early 2000s, with hits like Breathe Again, 1993, Unbreak My Heart, 1996, and He Wasn't Man Enough, 2000. She captivated audiences worldwide, combining emotional vulnerability with sensual stage presence. Yet beyond the Grammy Awards and chart-topping albums, one lingering story has followed her: a moonlit meeting with a fan that blurred the lines between stardom and intimacy. The incident allegedly happened in Florida after a late-night performance in the mid-1990s. Around 2 a.m., a paparazzo caught a shadowy silhouette of Toni walking along the beach beside a young man clutching a freshly signed poster. Witnesses described the scene as cinematic, the ocean waves glistening under the moonlight, Toni's hair dancing in the breeze, and her unmistakable laugh carrying over the sound of the surf. The fan was said to have asked her about Breathe Again, and Toni, in a gesture both intimate and mysterious, sang a few lines softly as the tide rolled in. According to local whispers, they sat on a wooden bench for hours, speaking quietly until dawn painted the horizon red. No photographs captured them closely. No recordings documented the conversation. Some stories claim she whispered something to him that made him bow his head in emotion, while others insisted it was nothing more than a friendly exchange. Still, the lack of clarity turned this meeting into legend. The local press dubbed it Moonlit Whisper. Unlike Chris Brown's alleged hidden door or Usher's digital late-night messages, Toni's rumored scandal was soft, romantic, and almost poetic. But it still raised eyebrows. Why would an international superstar spend the early hours of the morning with a stranger she had just met at her concert? Fans debated whether it showed her generosity and vulnerability, or whether it risked her reputation by fueling speculation she could never control. For Toni, who later struggled with health issues and financial troubles, the rumor became part of her complex public image. She was celebrated for her voice and her resilience, yet stories like this reminded people of her fragility, of her humanity behind the glamorous spotlight. The ambiguity of the beach encounter, neither confirmed nor denied, only added to the mystery. Even now, the moonlit whisper lingers as one of the gentlest yet most haunting scandals in R&B lore. It wasn't explosive or career-threatening, but it revealed the fine line between admiration and intimacy, reminding fans that even in the glow of moonlight, legends are still human beings searching for connection. Alicia Keys. Alicia Keys burst onto the music scene in 2001 with her debut album, Songs in a Minor, immediately winning 5 Grammy Awards and cementing her place as one of the most important R&B voices of her generation. With hits like Fallin' and If I Ain't Got You, she built her career on authenticity, blending classical piano skills with heartfelt lyrics. But even an artist celebrated for her grounded, soulful persona has faced whispers of scandal stories of private fan encounters that blurred the line between inspiration and intimacy. One story has lived on since 2004, when Alicia was at the peak of her early success. A label-sponsored songwriting contest offered a young fan the chance to meet her in New York City. Witnesses recalled the evening vividly: a corner cafe bathed in golden light, a mini piano set up near the table, and Alicia arriving with nothing more than a notebook filled with half-written lyrics. The fan entered nervously, clutching his winning sheet of music, while the city hummed outside. What happened behind those frosted glass windows, however, has remained a subject of endless speculation. Some accounts say it was purely professional, an exchange of ideas, Alicia encouraging a young songwriter while sipping coffee. Others hinted at something more: laughter mixed with piano notes. Long silences that felt intimate, and an atmosphere too personal to be reduced to mentorship. The fan was later seen leaving just before midnight, jacket slung over his arm, eyes glowing as though he had experienced something beyond music. Magazines at the time called it an inspirational night, a phrase that sparked fan club speculation around the globe. No photos were ever released, and Alicia herself brushed off questions with a gentle smile, saying only, "It's about the music." That denial, half-hearted and vague, left room for gossip to grow. Unlike Rick James's Velvet Room or Janet Jackson's secret other list, Alicia's alleged scandal carried an air of subtlety. It wasn't about excess or privilege. It was about closeness in a quiet cafe, about a superstar possibly lowering her guard for just one fan. That contrast is what made the rumor so captivating. Alicia's brand was built on integrity and sincerity. The idea of her engaging in something secretive felt almost contradictory, and yet strangely believable. To this day, the 2004 cafe meeting is remembered not as an explosive scandal, but as a hauntingly ambiguous chapter in Alicia Keys' legacy. Was it simply kindness from an artist to a young dreamer? Or did the night carry emotions no press release could capture? The truth remains locked in memory, half sung, half whispered, like an unreleased song the world will never hear. Beyoncé. Beyoncé Knowles Carter, the global icon whose name defines modern R&B, is often seen as untouchable. From her early days in Destiny's Child to her solo dominance with albums like Dangerously in Love 2003 and Lemonade 2016, she has cultivated an image of control, perfection, and power. Yet even someone as carefully guarded as Beyoncé has not escaped whispers, stories of one mysterious night in Paris that fans still debate to this day. The alleged incident took place in 2013 during her Mrs. Carter Show World Tour. A single fan claimed to have been pulled aside by security at Paris's Palais Omnisports, guided through 3 layers of doors, and eventually led backstage into a dimly lit room. Instead of glossy VIP passes or tour merchandise, the only memento he carried was a ticket marked with a smooth, handwritten B. From there, the story slips into ambiguity, half-truths, and speculation. According to the fan, the atmosphere was hushed. Faint yellow lighting, an unfinished bottle of wine, and the sound of soft music playing low in the background. Some accounts even described an empty chair positioned just beside the stage curtain, as though reserved for a chosen guest. The meeting was brief, but its very secrecy made it feel more intimate than any stadium performance. French tabloids reported it under the headline, "Il avait la lumière." They had a moment without light. Her team responded with a single line, "VIP experiences vary." That vague statement, instead of silencing the rumors, fueled them. Fans across forums dissected every detail. Was it marketing myth, or a genuine connection between artist and admirer? Some believed it was an urban legend born from the mystique Beyoncé carefully cultivates. Others swore it was evidence that even the most guarded star occasionally let the walls down. What makes this story resonate is the paradox it creates. Beyoncé's entire career has been built on flawless execution, from choreography to vocals to visuals. She is admired as much for her discipline as for her talent. Yet the idea of her choosing to meet a fan in secret, sharing a private moment beyond the blinding spotlight, feels almost too human to ignore. A decade later, the Parisian encounter remains one of the most whispered about rumors in R&B lore. No photos, no recordings, no confirmations, only a ticket with a rounded B and the echoes of a story that refuses to fade. Whether truth or fiction, it reminds us that even the most powerful icons may still crave connection beyond the perfection the world demands. The scandals of these 15 Black R&B legends leave us with more questions than answers. Were these secret encounters acts of kindness, moments of weakness, or calculated risks taken under the blinding weight of fame? The truth may forever live in whispers, half-remembered stories, and the blurred space between idol and admirer. But one thing is clear: legends are human, and humanity is rarely flawless. What do you think? Were these artists victims of rumor or architects of their own scandal? Share your thoughts below and join us at Legends of Black Excellence for more untold stories behind the music.